All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and you're going to have to bear with me because I have a lot of different things I'm going to share with you today. So I'm not going to share just different windows. I'm going to share my screen. So I need to make some linkages for you all on how we're doing messages and projects and so forth to see if we're all on the same page with how that's working. Um, so let's see here. I say I'm going to share my screen with a great deal of confidence. Here we go. Okay. Can you see this? Can you see the current brochure and the attendance sheet up right now
Yes.
on your end? Okay. So if you'll take a look at the attendance sheet, and if you are here and your name is not have an X by it under the attending column or column F, if you could just let me know that I've missed you, then I will definitely make sure that we get you here on the attendance. And I'll call for folks to, let me know if they're not on this or if they didn't sign in by 9:05 so that, we can get them on the board here too. We know that it's an early start meeting, and folks might not have been quite prepared for that. So right now we're missing Brian Schmidt, Michelle White, Mike Maurer. Is it Ra? How is that pronounced?
Raj.
Raj. Okay, so Raj and um, Mary Beth Harris. It looks like all that we are missing right now.
He's logging on. He texted me.
Oh, okay, cool.
He should be here, but don't wait on him. I'm here. I can.
Okay. All right. And then we have a couple of members, or at least if you are here representing the public or signed on just as a public meeting to join us here, we appreciate that. If you would identify who you are, I can put you on the list as well. Todd, I put you under public, but that's doesn't really matter.
Thank you, Lori, very much.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that's that for roll, and we'll add anybody that comes in a little later to that, a little later in the meeting. So welcome to, I guess what would be our second meeting talking about the update to the PPI. And I know last meeting that I threw a lot of information at you, and then I also followed up after Christmas with sort of the information that we talked about, the different tables that I said I would break out for you and send to you. And I did not receive any comment back from any of that, but I'm sure that you all have been busy getting back up from the holidays, and we're short staffed and so forth. So we're going to go back through that again. But I want to really start out with trying to give you an overview of why I'm leaning towards certain things and changes in the PPI, mainly reducing the numbers of projects that we are committing to under the PPI, because we are having to turn in all of this paperwork, make sure that all these publications and things get done annually because we have them in our PPI, but we're maxing out the score way before we have to, look at all these different alternative ways to get credit. So we're really doing way more work than we need to be doing to maximize the credit under the PPI. And while that's okay, if that's all what you all want to do, I'm fine with that. But the communities have a lot to keep up with as it is. And it's not saying that these outreach projects that are ongoing, like like the awareness week for the weather service and other things aren't going to keep on being part of the publicity, and we aren't going to, we aren't going to fall off on our partnership with those, but we're just not going to be, perhaps if you all decide, designating those as projects that we're going to commit to on an annual basis. Does that make sense? Because what we did previously, what we did on the first iteration of this, we really threw everything in the basket and we used it all. Having gone through the writing of the PPI process with several other communities since this PPI that we put together back 5 years ago, I have narrowed it down to communities really want to get maximum credit for the minimum amount of outlay as far as the PPI is concerned and the PPI projects, because the projects cost a lot of money in order to even stay in the CRS program. So why are we overcommitting? So, and you may decide that that's the path you want to go, and you may decide, yep, we still want to overcommit. We're good with that. I'm fine with that either way, but I just want to give, it's sort of hard sometimes to get the big picture when you're looking at different charts and you're jumping around the plan and you're not really sure how it all connects. Believe me, it's taken me years to get it ingrained in my brain how everything connects. So I just kind of want to give you a synopsis of what that is. So let's look. First, I want to look at the number of projects that we're doing, and I just want to throw out some numbers for you here, or point out some numbers on the screen. So these are all the projects that we committed to in the original PPI. These are the ones that we said we're going to do annually. The TDC website does not get credit because the TDC website, they are not giving credit under the PPI for websites. Websites get credit in Activity 350 under websites. They're not going to double credit it. It's not going to get credit here. You get credit for social medias and that sort of thing, but not websites. So that goes for both the TDC website and the NWS website. So we've never gotten credit for that. So those are, I cross those out. We know for sure those are going away because there's no sense in committing to that because we're not going to get any credit for it. Does that make sense to everybody? You all can talk.
Yes.
Yes.
You all are panelists. Everybody has the ability to unmute or stay unmuted and have a discussion. Okay, so that makes total sense, right? So then let's look at, so the Facts on Flooding brochure is the brochure that goes out to everyone that says, you know, hey, we could flood anywhere here. And that was one of our priority audiences, if you remember, and I'm going to bring up the priority audience part of the PPI. Move this so we can see everything here. Okay, so I have highlighted the projects that get credit or should get credit for being a priority audience. So Facts on Flooding, priority audience, all businesses, residents in the Keys, they need to know all of the facts that we have on the Facts on Flooding brochure. So I think that's an appropriate audience unless we have, and we do maximize credit on that particular outreach project. And that's really good because I know for the county, it's a lot of money, $10,000+ every year that's spent on that one publication. So we really want to maximize that. Now you see that these are the categories 1, or the topics 1 through 10 is how we get credit. And we only get credit for one message under each of those topics. The insurance is blacked out on those 2 activities because they get credited in a different activity, Activity 370, which is the promotion of insurance. And we use those 2 brochures to get credit there. So we cannot get the insurance topic credit here. So if you're thinking to yourself, why is there a black mark there? That's why. It gets way more credit over in Activity 370 when you claim it there for that particular topic than it does here. So that's why that's grayed out, but we do get maximum credit for the facts on flooding brochure. And then for the second priority audience we have, which is the repetitive loss areas, we also get maximum credit for that mailer that goes out, which is also a lot of money because it's a direct mail, it's a brochure, it costs to print it, put the addresses on, send it every year. Monroe County has nearly 10,000 structures in their repetitive loss areas. I don't know how many you all do, but it's still another mailing that you're responsible for, and we should be getting maximum credit, and we are. So that's the priority audiences. The priority audience, when we select a priority audience, we get 6 points for each one of the topics that we cover. If it's not a priority audience, it's either 2 or 1 point per each one of the topics that we cover for each of the projects. So we really want to maximize these priority audiences. So every project that we do, we're saying this goes to a priority audience, which makes sense. Why would you spend a lot of money on projects going to audiences that you haven't designated as priority? Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So know before you buy. One of the priority, or the third priority audience we had, was the real estate industry. Do we still think that the real estate industry is a priority audience? We have to send a brochure to them anyway for another activity, which is activity 320 for map information. So do we still believe that sending a flyer and a letter to the real estate agents saying, please make sure that your buyers are aware of the flood insurance implications, is that still an important audience?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll keep that. I totally agree with all that. Now, the TDC Hurricane Workshop. When you get to that one, do you see how many X's there are under the covered topics and PPI messages? And how many points we get for that project? 18. 18 points, because we've designated that TDC workshop that happens at the beginning of hurricane season every year as a priority audience. And honestly, it's a stretch to even get those topics covered, because it's just a meeting. I get the meeting notice and I ask them every year, hey, what did you talk about? I mean, so we're not maximizing credit by using them as a priority audience. Just keep that in mind right now. Okay. So we're only getting 18 points for that particular effort. Although we're not doing much, we're also not getting a lot of credit points for it. The NW, yes.
Lori, excuse me just for a minute.
Sure.
Do you have an idea of the audience that TDC meeting reaches?
They reach, and Kristen may be able to help me on this too.
It's like the hotels, the people who are at the hotels, restaurant owners, those kind of people who are some of like the Fury and the Danger Charters. They're all invited to that. The Lodging Association is very involved with that workshop.
And they invite the municipalities too. I get an invitation. This is Mimi and Lee.
Okay. Just in terms of the value of the information that's being shared, I know it's only 18 points, but if it's reaching a broad audience, I think that's very valuable. Well,
I don't know how broad. So it's business owners that have a stake in the tourist industry is the way I understand it.
Hey, Lori, do we,
Yeah.
This is Mel.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea what the average attendance is on the workshops?
I don't.
It's been 50 to 100 people. Last year it was done via Zoom. I don't know how many people tuned in via Zoom, but I've been to it in person, and there's a full house at the, like I think 2 years ago it was at the Marathon Government Center. and the Marathon City Hall, and it was a full house in there. So I don't know how many people fit in there, but I would say 50, 75 people at least.
Okay. So the appropriate messages, and we designated this when we first did the PPI, you're not going to tell the tourist industry, well, you should insure your property, because really what you're telling them in this meeting, my understanding of what they're telling them in this meeting is, this is what we do during an evacuation. This is how this works. And this is what you need to know about upcoming hurricane season. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, there's only specific topics that are appropriate. So they apparently talk about, protecting their buildings, their businesses, but mostly talking about the hurricane, which is, the PPI extra topics that we get were Hurricane Evacuation 1 and Hurricane Evacuation 2. So really what they're talking about is there's a hazard, protect your property, and make sure that we evacuate. So those are the topics that we get credit for that priority audience. And those are appropriate. We maybe should try to protect people out of that. But I don't have any, unless any of you all do, have any say in what they talk about in this workshop.
It's Andy Newman's show, but
yeah.
They definitely talk about protecting people, about evacuations, about when's the safe time to leave, listen to, the officials. That kind of message is definitely being pushed at that workshop.
Yeah, I've had a really hard time getting information like an agenda or what they talk about from there. I've had to just kind of I grab their a screenshot from their website whenever we have some sort of event or potential event, and I sort of weave that together, saying, okay, these are the topics covered. If we want to keep them as a priority audience, I'm fine with that, but we need to find a way to better document what actually is talked about in that meeting, so we can at least maximize the credit for what is talked about in that meeting.
Does anyone on the call attend the workshop?
I do. I've done it every year for the past 3 years. I was a speaker last year as well. Roman and Shannon are typically speakers as well.
Would you mind providing us with an agenda so Lori doesn't have to go digging around?
Or
I'm searching for it right now too.
Yeah, we could also come up with something extremely simple, not a brochure or something of that nature, but a letter to them asking them to, or maybe Kristen can even, I'm putting a lot on Kristen, but because she's the one who's delivering a lot of these messages, but would you all mind covering these messages in your workshop, on an annual basis, so we can maximize that credit? We thought it was a good audience and a priority audience before, and I'm fine with that, and we can keep it on. But I would suggest that we try to make sure that we're maximizing that credit best we can.
I mean, this is Mel again. I think in my opinion, that's a valuable workshop. Mm-hmm. Just with the amount of new guys that we have coming on board in that specific industry, I'll call it hospitality. There's a lot of new guys coming on, a lot of old guys dropping off. So I think it's valuable for that. I mean, the one thing I would make sure that they included within their initial comments is just that, just make everyone aware that this is an integral part of our CRS credits. And it's very important that, we get attendance, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and that's fine. And putting priority audiences in, taking them out, getting credit for the outreach doesn't mean that these are not important things that are going to go on even without CRS. So things that won't go on without CRS are facts on flooding, repetitive loss brochures, know when you buy, you know what you're getting into as far as insurance is concerned. Unless CRS is the driving force behind those aren't going to get done. I mean, the reality. But you know, the TDC workshop is going to get done whether we have it in here or whether we don't. But it sounds like, you know, we still think this is a valuable tool. We need to keep it in as a priority audience, but maybe we do need to come up with something so that we can make sure that they're covering, you know, maybe a few more topics, so we don't have to have as many projects. And some of the messages, you know, I think would be quite valuable, even if they talked about insuring your business. You know, make sure what you got on your business is, you know, some sort of insurance, any of those things. I don't know, Kristen, do you think any of these build responsibly, obviously? So let's go through these. Know your hazard, they're going to talk about that. Insure your property, we don't currently get credit for that, but perhaps that would be an appropriate message for those business owners that come to this, the workshop. Protect your property, like boarding it up and so forth. Or perhaps even, you know, making sure that well, that's not boarding it up, is not part of this. So contact your community if you need assistance with your property that's flooding. That may not be appropriate, and you guys can chime in here. Sign up for alerts, prepare an evacuation plan. They probably
definitely includes that. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So we don't currently get credit for that topic covered. Natural floodplain functions, obviously, you're probably not going to talk about that. Not talk about build responsibly. Not going to talk about mitigation, probably. But certainly evacuation, know your evacuation zone, and perhaps get a plan.
Definitely get a plan.
Okay. And licensed contractors, that's probably not one that we would want to cover there. So it looks like what we're going to go for here is, do you think they would say to their audience, you know, make sure to pull out your insurance policy and see where you are? Or would that not be something you think that they would be interested necessarily?
We can add that in. Like I said, Shannon's always one of the speakers, and I've been a speaker before, and okay. I'm sure that's something that we could say, hey, Shannon, can we make sure that we add this in?
Okay.
I mean,
yeah, give her talking points.
Yes, exactly. Talking points. Like here are the important CRS messages. You all have been important partners in the past. We do get stakeholder credit because it's, you know, they're a stakeholder, and the TDC is a stakeholder. And so, you know, just checking off a few more boxes, we can bring that score up to 36 for a total of 62 points and keep it as a priority audience. But here's some numbers I want to point out to you. 350 points maximum in this activity for both the outreach projects that we're talking about here and for the flood response messages. So adding the two together, no matter how many points you get, the maximum credit for CRS is 350 points. So keep that in mind. We currently, it doesn't even show what the score is. It just stops at a max for each one of the columns. And then here it does total up that it's 340 points with what we're doing, but it stops at the 340 points. Actually, it's way more than that. So I want to play around, after we get through this, I'm going to play around with this worksheet a little bit and show you how it works. The NWS Awareness Week. That's their campaign. It's not a priority audience. It's not, it's something that was out there that we designated as, hey, this is happening. Let's get CRS credit for it. It's 2 points for each one of the topics. And again, we have to scurry up all of their publications and stuff during Awareness Week to document this annually for the CRS program. So just keep that in mind. The media blitz, that's the priority audience number 5, which is the media. It's a good one, I think. Other communities are using that, other large communities like Lee County. But I'm wondering, we get very few points for that. And I know that Kristen, offered to perhaps take the brochure. We could either, which would definitely totally ramp up that credit, or we could give them just a thumb drive with the brochure on it, or even a printout of the priority messages that we are hoping that they will distribute as we come up with events or on an annual basis. I don't really know how that would work with that group, but I know Kristen probably does. Because you do the media bits.
Yeah, so when I go up there, I'm just making sure that's not a separate thing, but Roman, Shannon, and I, and Andy Newman go up there, and we actually go to each news station in Miami, and we drop off the state of the county with all the contact information, but I can bring the brochures, and I'm in regular contact with most of the Miami news stations anyway, especially during hurricane season, that giving them, sending them, emailing them the brochures, or even sending them key talking points or whatnot. That's absolutely no problem.
Okay, so sending them key talking points pre or post event, that goes over in FRP. So that goes over in flood response preparedness. So we're responding, we're prepared. These are the messages we're telling them. We'll talk about that on that end of the spectrum. But for your media blitz, when you go up there, and you've been giving me like, okay, here are all the contacts, and here are the people that we've confirmed and stuff, and that's great. Do you think that just handing them a brochure and saying, hey, these are the messages that we really want to hand out, or that we really want to promote? Or do you think maybe some other document, not complicated, giving it to them PDF, or in an electronic format? What do you think would be best for that, Kristen?
Well, I found when we go up there, what they usually do is they ask us a bunch of questions. Sometimes they'll get Shannon or Roman on camera or on the radio to do PSAs or whatnot that they can run, and just have those little clips, their little B-roll of them and everything as well. So I think just going in person has been, I feel like a leave behind is the best thing. If I email them, it's probably going to get lost, but something that they can leave in their desk, or, hey, leave in the front of the state of the county, or something that they keep around, so that when they need to know what's going on, they have it close by when they're looking for what, hey, there's something heading for the Florida Keys. Let's find who we need to call.
So would that be the Facts on Flooding brochure? Would that be appropriate?
Yeah, I think so.
Or maybe we could even take it and tweak it with because we'd only have to print a few, right? We could probably print them in-house with a cover that says, for the media of some sort. Yeah, I don't know.
I could totally do that. And I usually, Andy Newman and I usually make a media guide as well, that has like all the contact information for, all the municipalities and everything like that as well. But just adding maybe those facts in that. And I don't have one on me that I can see right now, but I might have all of some of those talking points and key things that we do leave behind anyway.
So the media guide, in my opinion, and everybody can, chime in here, the media guide is the perfect place for that. By the way, here are the messages, or here is the brochure. This is the brochure that we have in Monroe County. It doesn't list all the municipalities, but it does have all of the messages. But like we did or like what you did on the website, Kristen, where you just took the topics and basically put the messages instead of the fancy brochure. Something like that would be terrific. If we could get the commitment to that, then that's awesome. We could.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only reason why I didn't list the brochures on there is because of ADA compliance. I don't know if an ADA reader can read the brochures on the website or not.
Oh, okay. Okay. So did you want to do the brochure, or do we want to tweak the brochure, or do we want to just put the messages in the media guide? What do you think would be best?
I think putting something in the media guide so that we're not handing them 15 things, here's the one important thing and here's the second important thing. And then they're not, getting inundated with a whole bunch of papers.
Okay. So is that something that you and I could work on a date specific every year? I'm sure you have to have some lead time for that, probably coming up soon, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So what do you all think about doing something like that for the media blitz? So we can, so that we can try to capitalize on all of the credit that we are entitled to for covering these different topics. Appropriate messages that they would send out.
Sounds good, Lori.
Okay.
I think it sounds like a great idea.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. I'm glad you agree. This is becoming really popular. So I think it's really a good thing, because more and more communities are saying, it's the media we want to get on board, because we want everybody to be saying the same thing. And, if one media outlet is saying one thing and one media outlet, I mean, you can't control it, but you can certainly direct it at least once per year and give them something to go on if they're trying to figure out what it is they're going to say. So I've added that in as, here we are with everything with that credit for that priority audience. And the last of the priority audiences is the permittees, folks coming in to get a permit at the building department. We do not get 6 points for each one of the topics credited, because the brochure lays on a counter somewhere and somebody has to be interested in picking up that brochure in order for them to get the brochure into their hands. So while we designated it as a priority audience, we could not get the 6 points because we could not say that we were reaching 95% of the permit applicants, or the folks who actually got a permit. What do we want to do with that? While I believe the brochure is in a good place, designating them as a priority audience is getting us nothing.
Hey, Lori, Gerard, can we just make that part of the permit package to where it goes out to everybody that comes in to apply for a permit?
Right, and have them sign a form like they do the endangered species cat brochure here in Layton.
Yeah, we don't need that level of detail. So we won't say that we would make them sign that they got it, because we don't really have to do that, at least not for the PPI. But I would have to also check with Monroe County Permitting Department, because while it might be easy for Layton or Key Colony Beach, it might be a little more burdensome to have the the folks, the front counter folks who were already overtaxed, making sure that they give everybody one of these brochures.
Right. Do they not have a permit package that they just give them what they need to apply? Like a permit application?
Well, yes, but I believe that it can be obtained online. So,
Right.
you know, they could go online and get their permit package and fill it out. I'm thinking this is more for permittees, folks who actually get a permit. So here's what you need to know, rather than all those who apply, because that's even more burdensome. Thoughts? I don't
And the
have
main
anybody
thing,
from the
too,
building department in Monroe, unfortunately.
is that the actual owners may not be the ones picking up permits, usually the contractor.
Right,
So it might not get to the other people.
right.
I assume by the time they're picking up their permit too, that they are already, you know, their plans and designs are already done at that point for
That's true
flood.
too.
Yeah.
That's true too. They've already jumped through all of the hoops. Although, you know, this is more about insuring and all of that, you know, all of the topics, hurricanes, so forth. But again, we're printing these extra flyers, putting them there, and we're just not really getting a lot of credit for it. So do we want to even keep it as a priority audience? Is this brochure going out to those folks really a priority?
Can you uncheck them all and see what that affects score-wise?
I am going to do that for a lot of these. I'm going to show you how this works in just a minute.
As long as if we keep it on and it just stays at, you know, as a, you know, sitting in the little desk thing right there, and you take it as you need it. And if it's worth it to do that, and it's not creating a burden on anybody to try and, you know, if it's just there in the front desk or in the magazine rack or whatnot, and we're getting points for it, it's not really much extra that we're having to do. So it's not burdensome at this point. If we're not asking them to add it into permit packages and requiring anything additional than what we're already doing.
Agreed, but then do we need to have it as a priority audience? Because we're not reaching that priority audience.
I don't think we do. You've got about 700 points on that board, don't we, Lori?
We do. And you're going to be shocked at how many of these we can let go.
Right.
And not even change the score.
Correct. I agree.
Then get rid of it. And let's not print those extras.
Exactly.
Okay, that's what I really wanted to drive home to you before we start talking about all these things we want to add.
Yeah.
Because we're adding. And while it's great, I do think that you want to add what's appropriate for CRS here. The other projects are probably going to get done anyway. You know, I'm not promoting that we're going to get rid of anything that's not going to get done anyway. But we can do the facts on flooding. People who put it in their permitting department, they can, you know, get this 1 point, you know, multiplied by 10, and it's got a stakeholder on it, so they end up with 17 points. So that's not a big deal. But I do agree that taking it out as a priority audience is probably a good thing, because we're not really doing what we're saying. We're saying it's priority audience. We should give it to everybody, and then we don't. Okay. So the hurricane guide, man, you got to dig to find these topics. And it is a 2-pointer because it does get given to certain locations. So we'll talk about that. It's a big guide. I do get it every year from the folks that the newspaper that put it in the newspaper. It's not a big deal, but it's a lot of documentation. It's a huge sort of publication going into the packet that might not need to go there when we start talking about the points. I think the firm mitigation workshops, when we start talking about the points, I don't know, you know, I know that they're going to continue that probably for the foreseeable future. And we'll look at that on points and see what that does when we take that off. and see if we want to keep it. The licensed contractor, that's going to go out in those publications in the barometer, and it goes out in several different publications. So that's going to happen anyway. But again, do we want to commit to giving that documentation every year? We'll look at that with the points. The evacuation signs, as you can see, about 20 points. There's probably a reason to keep that because it's super easy to do. It's going to happen. It's there. The signs are there. We get credit for it. Everybody gets credit for it. There's no additional documentation every year. We have the pictures of the signs. We're good to go on that. But we'll look at that as far as credit points are concerned. The Monroe County channel, where we run the pre-hurricane sort of informational slides that get run. You can see what we're doing with the points there. There's no even credit points for stakeholders on that one because there are no stakeholders associated with that. It's coming from Monroe County. The EM events, the emergency management, the events, they've agreed to take the brochures and hand them out at the events. That gets us quite a few points, but we do have to, and it gets everybody points because these events are invited, everyone's invited, and the county has been the one doing the printing and the cost of the printing. And then the real estate flyers, that was an idea that we had sort of add on. I think when we did the Key Colony Beach addendum, we had email addresses of the insurance industry at that time. We had somebody on board, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was actually Firm that got us the email addresses for the real estate agents and businesses in the county, and we were able to email out a flyer. How do you help your buyers decide about their insurance needs? I haven't been able to get my hands on that list, so that might be one that we might have to let go by the wayside if we can't get our hands on the list. So let's talk about changing points. And what I'm going to do is, if I take off the times per year here, it will zero out the credit, because if you don't send it out, you don't get any credit. So if I take off, so do we want to see what happens when we take off the flood awareness week? Nothing changed. No points change. I did add in the extra things that we talked about in the brochures for Media Week and what we think TDC will be able to do for us on that meeting. I left in the facts on flooding. What about if we take out the hurricane guide? We say 0 to that. The score change? Nope. 0 to the mitigation, to the firm workshops. What about the licensed contractor? Do we want to see what happens with that?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. The evacuation signs, I'm suggesting just leaving those in, but we can take them out just for grins. The TV, that one's a difficult one too. The messages are kind of there, but it's a stretch, and I don't have any input in that.
So with MCTV, I can do whatever we want on there. So just let me know.
Okay. So I zeroed that out.
But if we want to take it out and I don't have to worry about it, that's even better.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Let's not to commit the more than we really actually need. The real estate flyer. Yeah. So we took out, so you can see what I've zeroed out. I've left in all of the priority audience ones. with the exception of the facts on flooding for the building department, because that was already scored at 1 anyway. And we still haven't changed the score. We're still maximizing the credit. Nothing has changed, because when it gets to 280, 60, it stops counting.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything else on here that we should not be committing to? And do we want to replace the priority audience 6? Knowing now how this works with outreach.
Yes, less is more.
Yes, agreed.
I think all these things are going to happen anyway. They are not dependent on us getting a CRS score to drive it. I'm not saying they're not important. I'm just saying, why are we committing to it? And why are we going through all of the pains to get this together every single year when we're not going to get any more credit for it? It's useless. They throw it away.
Yes, agreed.
Yes, agreed, Lori.
Okay. So what about this facts on flooding brochure? Do we want to see what happens with it at the building department? Or are you stuck on keeping it?
Let's look. Let's see.
That would be a huge money saver if we were able to get rid of it, but.
Yeah, we don't have to print all those. I have to print thousands more every year. Well, at least for the county. I don't know what you guys do. You guys, some of the smaller guys, you probably don't have as much impact as far as the costs are concerned. Okay, so that's leaving. You see what we're leaving now? The only other big one is the EM county events.
So did you take out the facts on flooding brochures?
I took out the facts on flooding brochures at the building department.
And it has no impact?
No impact. What would you guys like to do?
Move forward with killing all items that we marked as 0.
Yeah, if it's not affecting our score, let's get rid of everything that we don't need.
I can't agree more.
I agree.
Especially when it comes to printing and costing money. I think those should be the first things that go if we're able to eliminate some of those things.
Yeah. Sadly, hopefully when CRS Next comes out, they'll move into a century where we're more electronic than we are print it and mail it, because even their own studies have shown that it's not effective. But for now, we're stuck with it. So for now, for other activities in the whole program, those 1, 2, and 3 we have to do. And it has to be a direct mailing unless we want to hang it on the doors, or we have some other way that we can verify that we have delivered to all of those addresses these messages. So that's an unfortunate thing. I think there's better ways to do that, but for now we're stuck. In 2025, maybe we'll want to rewrite the PPI if they come out with better ways to score outreach, or better ways to reach the public, because there are better ways for sure. So you can see that we've even eliminated the EM events. We've eliminated everything. Basically, that's not a priority audience. And we still get the same score. Can we move forward? Agreed? We're agreed, right? This is good. I'm going to save this. Great. I'm going to save this worksheet, and I'm going to write the PPI that these are the projects under these priority audiences, and we're just going to eliminate priority audience 6.
Agreed.
Are we in agreement?
Agreed. Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. Does it seem to make more sense now? It's just like the light bulb went on. Like, they're not understanding that we're not adding more. What we need to do is streamline this thing. So, And part of that is on me because the PPI program was so new, and I threw everything at it to make sure that we would get maximum amount of credit, and boy did we. All right, so we're good. We're gonna back down to having 5 priority audiences. We talked about adding the areas subject to sea level rise. With all of this information that you have now, do you still want to move forward trying to add them? And we also talked about the permit or the folks with the re-entry tags. So we can add them as a priority audience, but you see we're not going to get any more credit.
I don't think
Let's not make more work.
Okay, so we can table all of that discussion that we had before about adding those, right?
Yeah.
Yay! Okay. So our current outreach projects, can we just go through this list really quickly? And if you have any knowledge about whether these projects, because I don't have firsthand knowledge on some of these, whether these projects still exist or not, I would greatly appreciate you unmuting and just saying yay or nay, this project exists. And we'll leave it on here. If it doesn't, we just need to take it off. We need to par down this list as well, because this list was made when we all came to the table and threw all of our outreach in the middle, and this is what happened. So we have the facts on flooding. We know we're doing that. The repetitive loss. We have said that we are going to not probably put this in. Oh, this is for the realtor. So we got to keep that. The citizen. We know that that goes on, right?
The weekly.
The citizen working guide.
It's the weekly hurricane guide.
Oh gosh, I didn't even know it went on a weekly basis.
The weekly and
No,
the
the weekly is the
citizen
name of the paper.
is a newspaper. The weekly newspapers does a hurricane
Oh, the
guide, and
weekly.
so does
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yes, I always never have gotten. Okay, I never have gotten that straight. All right, so the contractor licensing board, that does still go in the barometer. We still pay for that. Evacuation signs, we know that happens. What about the hurricane survival guide in the keynoter?
Keynoter no longer exists.
Yep, that's gone.
Okie dokie. So this is the media guide, the media book that we were talking about. So we want to call it the media guide. Correct? And that's on the Media Blitz week. Protecting Paradise. It's an insert in the Citizen, the Barometer, and we know not in the Keynoter. Does anybody know if that exists? All right, we're going to take it out. We know that we still broadcast. We know that EM does, and this is not our list of projects we're going to do. This is just the ones we know are out there. We know that the county does a lot of presentations. We won't have to print that flyer for them anymore. We don't use these FDEM rack cards anymore. I don't. Does anybody else?
We have them out front, but they don't really get taken.
We have them, but nobody takes.
Okay, so you're not going to replenish them once they're gone?
It'll be a while before they're gone.
We have this media guide in here twice. My bad. We're going to take it out. Property insurance users guide by firm. That is up on the website. I checked it. So I guess we'll leave it there, if that's okay with you guys.
That is something that we revise probably every 2 to 3 years as property insurance changes in Monroe County. Not that it changes all that often, so.
Okay. So it's just put up there on the website, right?
We also take it to insurance agents' offices, real estate agents' offices. So they do have a supply of those.
Okay. Okay, so we do put these at insurance. Okay. The mitigation workshops, we know those are still ongoing, right? I am going to take out the 3 because we don't know exactly how many, right?
Agree.
So this is the keys, the weather, the hurricane program, and responding to disasters. It's a workshop. I don't know anything about that. Does anybody else?
They still do that annually.
Okay. So they also do their booth, right? Well, when we can have gatherings, they do their booth at the Seafood Festival and different places. The Weather Service still comes out and does their booth. I'm pretty sure.
I believe so, but if it's not affecting anything, since we don't have a representative on here saying that that's something that they're definitely doing, is that something that we should keep on here?
No, we'll just take it off. Storm spotting classes.
They definitely still do that.
Okay. And they definitely still do their website and so forth. And they do Facebook and Twitter. Absolutely. When they're having an event, when they do all the social media stuff, because that's where I get it, their stuff, when I have to report on it. We still have the emergency management website, and I know a lot of you all even direct your websites to that. Monroe County still has Facebook, right, Kristen?
Yep.
Marathon had a different flood brochure that you used to mail. Do you want me just to take this out because it's now the facts on flooding?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
And Lori,
yep.
Lori, can I ask a question? Would that eliminate my annual? I no longer need to do my annual brochure either. For CRS, or does this PPI?
You have to.
Sorry.
When we get to the this is so yes, you will still have to do all of the outreach projects that we just talked about on that spreadsheet, except for the ones that the county do, and we just everybody gets credit for it. So you're still going to have to do your
flood information.
You're going to have to do your flood information that goes to everyone, because we've designated everyone as the priority audience. Yep. And you don't have a repetitive loss area, but then you're going to have to do it to the realtors, but you're going to do that for activity 320 anyway.
Right.
So yes, you're still going to have to do that. But what we've done is everybody's pretty much taken the brochure that Monroe County uses and sort of morph that into their own brochure, or use that and change the logos. But whatever you want to do, you still have to make sure that you're covering those messages.
Okay, very
good. You still have to do it, but it'll be in a different format probably.
Yep.
And if you just, honestly, if you want to take the messages and put them on a copier and send them out in black and white, nobody says you can't do that. I mean, you can do whatever is good for you as long as you get the same messages out. When we first started this, we wanted the brochure so that everybody wouldn't have to do their own brochure, that everybody could kind of use what the county designed.
Right.
But that's totally up to you. As long as you cover the topics, then you're going to get credit, and you're going to be okay.
Hey, Lori, with the Facebook stuff, it says annual. Is that something that needs to be changed to ongoing? Because we definitely are writing about this stuff whenever something's happening.
Absolutely. We'll make it ongoing. You guys are great today. Thank you. FEMA brochures in the Marathon office. I'm guessing that that's probably for the city of Marathon. Yes, it would be.
So we
Right.
have them too, but if that's
Okay.
something that maybe we could all just take out since it's a FEMA thing, maybe, I mean, I know that we have them at our county building departments as well. Yeah, but I don't know if that's maybe something that either put county-wide building departments, or maybe it's something that we take out since it's something that if FEMA doesn't print something one year, maybe we're not being held to it.
Yeah, well, this isn't kind of a hold to it. This is like, does it exist? This is kind of what's out there.
Oh, yes, they exist, but I would
Okay.
put that as county-wide then instead of
Okay.
just Marathon.
Agreed.
All right. TDC Prepared in Paradise. That's kind of what they put out. I think they still put it out every year, like right before hurricane season on their website. I don't know about any printed publication.
I don't know about that at all.
Okay. I have it from last year, so I guess we'll just leave it on there or take it. It doesn't matter either way. It's not going to matter. The tourist industry workshop, we know that goes on. We talked about that. I know we have this media blitz training on here like 15 times. We were really stuck on that, weren't we? Let's see. Let's take this out.
And
Don't
that's
need it.
not annually anyway. That's kind of like on a need basis. I don't know
The
if-
media blitz?
The training. So that
Oh.
says training.
Okay, is that something different?
I think so, because like Andy will bring down some people every once in a while, so it's not annually, but like when Shannon came on board and when I came on board, he'll bring down like some professionals to, you know, tell you how to speak on camera and, you know, what to say and what not to say and how to present and blah 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 blah. So I think that's definitely different than the media blitz, but it's
Okay.
not held annually. It's just held on like on need basis.
Okay. If it doesn't go in at least annually, it shouldn't be on this list. If it doesn't happen at least annually.
Yeah, remove it.
Okay. Keys Energy bill stuffer. No idea. What's in your bills? Do you ever get a stuffer in your bill? I think that was for Key West at one point. I'm not sure.
I can ask Julio if those go out, but most people I think probably get their bills via email now rather than a hard copy.
And
Okay, so
Keys Energy is lower keys, not
Okay.
countywide.
Right. So this is just a, you know, hey, what's out there, what's happening. And if it was lower keys, I know Key West was putting something and paying for something to have it stuffed into the energy bill.
Well, and the electric co-op sends out a magazine, storm prep every year. They do a monthly magazine, and the
Okay.
one in May is all about hurricane preparedness. Flooding.
Do a lot of people still get paper bills?
Not paper bills, but they send out a magazine to all of their clients or the Keys
Gotcha.
Electric Co-op, a monthly magazine. And the one in May is all about hurricane prep.
Oh, I've seen that. The Currents or whatever
Yeah,
it's called.
the Currents
Yeah,
magazine.
I've seen it.
And it is ongoing.
Okay, so do we want to add?
It was just for your information.
Okay. Well, we can add it here as current projects. Up to you guys if you want to add it in. So the NWS Severe Weather Week, we know that goes on every year. We know that they hit Facebook pretty hard with those messages, and they're pretty unified too. I think they actually get it from the National Weather Service, and then we repeat the campaign in our local.
Emergency management shares
Yeah.
all of their stuff, but it says workshop. I don't know if that needs to say. I think they do an in-person thing as well, don't they? But it's mainly social media that I know of personally.
Okay, so let's just take this out and leave it as social media. This is basically just an inventory. It's not going to affect us one way or the other. It's just, hey, we looked at what's out there. The Key West website, we all have websites. Do we need to keep like individual things in here, like the Key West website? I don't care either way.
I don't see why we should. The website's there.
Yeah, so we've got Island Rada, emergency events. We've got some very specific things here for different communities. Do you want to leave specific community stuff in or take it out?
I would take it out.
I would take it out unless it looks better for them to have separately listed things, but your
There's
call
nothing.
on that. Yeah. If it's not doing anything, let's make this shorter and sweeter.
More.
I totally agree. I totally agree. This is just like, and you kind of want to try to keep mirroring, hey, we think it's important because we've also named it in other places, and hey, look, it's also on this list and this list and this list. So it just, that looks better in the PPI, and it can get lost when you have a lot of different meanderings into different things. So the severe weather guide, that's like a 2-page printout thing. I've seen it here recently, actually, when I did a search that the emergency management takes with them and hands out.
I don't know what it is, but maybe I should.
And Publix has a hurricane guide that they put out that I saw when I was down there. Have anybody else seen that? I was like, wow, Publix does this. But since we're not doing specific things like businesses, and I think we should just take it out. We'll just take these out. In my opinion, unless I have some strong opposition. And we said this realtor flyer isn't going out at all anymore because we don't have those email addresses unless somebody can get them. Okay, perfect. All right. So these are the outlets that we said were important outlets to use. The news media, obviously. Key West Weather Service. The TDC.
I would add Nextdoor
yes,
to the social media.
We were going to add that. Do I have a list?
Maybe not. I guess this is under National Weather Service though, but I know like we use Nextdoor a lot, and then we have that Alert Monroe, but I'm just seeing National Weather Service right there. So,
well, maybe we need a whole nother category of that is social media. That's news media. That's NWS for what they do, and the TDC and the firm. We're keeping the firm as a media for information.
Our website is fairly, very good, chock full of information. So I would keep it.
Okay. Emergency management, obviously, we want to keep them around as a way to help us get messages out there, because we still have the flood response stuff that we still need to get out there. The Florida Division of Emergency Management, and the communities. I will probably rework that wording, since it's probably needs to be updated given the fact that we've all participated in this PPI for quite some time now. But we can add here social media, and I think that would be a good idea. What do you think? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to add
it is
Facebook.
listed though, like
Yes.
under Monroe County Emergency Management, it is listed. Like it says social media down there, and then I guess under like National Weather Service. So maybe add like municipalities and put like social media as one of their things or something. I don't know.
Well, these are partners with the municipalities. So maybe we don't need anything else but it just says social media without naming the social media. It do we want to name the social media?
So
here,
maybe under
social-
National Weather Service, just put social media there too and take out on Facebook and Twitter.
Done.
Yeah. Boom.
All right. Perfect. So we won't. So I will have to rework this chart because we obviously are, going to move some messages around because we said there were some, like the tourist industry, we wanted to add some messages to that was important. We want to add some important messages to the media when we visit them. So I will use those brochures to go through and rework this chart to make the check marks appropriate for the messages that we think that we want to send to those folks. I did pick out, and you'll have to excuse my like searching around here. PPI in your meetings. I sent you guys the charts that were broken out. Here we go. Messages. With some notes on them about what we had talked about. No, this is the wrong thing. Can you open this one for me, please? It's probably already open. Yes, here it is. So we talked a little bit about these messages and outcomes. Remember that we have to be able to measure outcomes, right? So we have to, if we have a message, we have to say, okay, what are we going to use to try to measure this as an outcome? Or what do we want the outcome to be? But we talked about the find out if you're in a flood zone. We also talked about under know your hazard. We want to know the difference between a flood zone and evacuation zone. So we talked about that as potentially something that we might want to add as a message. We talked about the equipment. So elevate your equipment above the flood level, or we talked about, do we want to say to the Florida building code or to the local building code, or what do we want to do with those two messages? If anything.
Is this something that just goes on the brochure? It's not something that goes on social media and all those things?
Well, we're not committed as a project to put these out on social media every year, these messages, but it could. We certainly want to make them appropriate to use everywhere.
On the elevating your equipment, I don't think you should use Florida Building Code because the other municipalities have those higher standards. So I would refer them to their local planning department or building department for the elevation of equipment.
Right. So elevate your equipment. This is kind of where we got stuck before. So you don't think above the flood level.
No, because they don't know what that level may be in their municipality. So if they go and do something, mind you, without a permit, or, they think they're raising it above, but they're a foot below the requirements.
Can we just say something like elevate your equipment and just take out the above the flood level?
Yeah, Lori, what I would suggest is we state to the local building code, because that drives them to look for that.
Correct. And that gets them to find out what the rules are.
Right, exactly.
We're the one with the
How about to meet local building. Elevate your equipment.
Local requirements instead of getting hung up on the
above local requirements.
No, elevate your equipment
to
Two local
Two.
requirements.
How about local code?
Yeah, so I'm just confused with this. Are we talking in this case about like elevating your water heater and your washer and dryer? Or are we talking about elevating like your electrical plugs in your house?
No, I think it's more of the service that is coming into the house, the meters.
I would say it's your equipment. It's like the washing machine.
So
the
I
dryer.
would,
So
I
it's
would
fair- Yeah.
yeah. So I would verify whether or not we're talking about what we're talking about. Because
Right.
I don't know that there's any code saying that you have to have your washer and dryer elevated. You know
No,
what I
that
mean?
is correct. I didn't think equipment. Washer and dryer to me is an appliance, not equipment. A compressor is equipment. A meter is equipment.
And some people would argue a meter isn't equipment, but a compressor is. So it
Right.
definitely can be interpreted a lot of different ways.
I understand that.
So is there a different message we'd like to put here? This is our time to change it, getting away from
Yes.
equipment altogether. Let's think outside the box.
Yes.
Let's think of something different than equipment. What can we tell people to do that will increase our permits, or that will, not that it's going to increase our permits, but the goal would be to get people to get a permit to mitigate, some way to mitigate from future flooding. Do we want to even say something like investigate grant programs to help you elevate above the flood, or something like that, you know?
Yes, that sounds way better than
Or
I think what we
retrofit.
have.
Is retrofit a proper word? After the, if you're in a ground level home, you can retrofit it to keep the water out of it, maybe.
You
Or
can retrofit, but you get absolutely no credits on your flood policy. The biggest
right.
way to obtain a reduction in flood premiums would be to elevate the home.
Correct. And
that is one of the things that firm is working towards to get obviously funding in order to help people elevate their homes.
Sure.
How about ways to what? Retrofit, or because retrofit, all of it's mitigation. Retrofit is a mitigation, elevation is a mitigation, tear down, rebuild is a mitigation, tear it down and keep it as open space is a mitigation.
Maybe mitigate is the proper word. Ways to mitigate flooding.
Mitigate
flood damage.
Future flooding. Damage, future flooding. Is mitigate the right word for future flooding? Against future flooding? Against.
I'm going to chime in here because there's a few things that we've been discussing, and primarily the word mitigation, that does not work well in studies of communication with normal people.
Okay.
So, I mean, just
mitigate is definitely a tough word.
Yeah. So, I mean, as we start, I don't want to throw a wrench in anything right now. Let's get this done. But when we do a final review, we should really be picking out those words that are not going to resonate with people. That's my 2 cents.
Help us with that. We want this to resonate. That's why this document exists. We should, and why, we have the great opportunity to have folks who have PIO experience.
Instead of mitigate, use protect. So talk to your local community about ways to protect or prevent against. Those would be better. Yeah, probably.
Alicia. That's great.
Thank you. So yeah, that's awesome. So are there any other messages here where we feel like we want to use better words? So let's go back up to find out what flood zone you're in. We discussed this being knowing the difference between the two flood zones. Do we want to leave it find out what flood zone you're in? Or do we want to put it, we want to do something else with that message back up under number 1?
So with that, and Mel might know differently, but okay, so this was the one that last time I was like zone 1, zone 2, zone 3 for evacuation zones. And then we discussed last week that maybe we're talking about, or, you know, whenever our last meeting was, that we were talking about like VE, AE, like those kind of zones. But should the message just regardless of what flood zone you're in be that all areas of the Keys are subject to a flood hazard and regardless of what flood zone they're in? Which is that first message right above that.
Right.
And I'll add a slightly different take on this, which is figure out your elevation. As a homeowner, it speaks more to me to know that I'm elevated 6 foot above base flood than it does to know what zone I'm in. I don't know if anyone else feels that way.
But both things kind of go hand in hand, though.
I mean, if we could get rid of find out what flood zone you're in and just say all areas of the Keys are subject to flood hazard, I think that that covers it.
So that covers those.
I tend to agree with you on that.
The only way you're going to find out how high or low you are in your flood zone based on the base flood elevation is with an elevation certificate. And just, you know, maybe Rebecca can chime in. I don't know if a lot of folks, especially on the older homes, have those.
So that's exactly what I was going to say, Mel. Maybe a third appropriate message would be get an elevation certificate.
Well, I mean, that's the message that we're pounding at firm with risk rating 2.0 is get an elevation certificate, because that is how you're going to know going forward what your true elevation is. And it also helps in rating as well, in rating, you know, with the new risk rating 2.0.
So do we want to take out find your zone, because that can be confusing? Are you talking evacuation or flood, and put get an elevation certificate?
And put that under insure your property probably instead of under know your flood hazard.
Yeah, this is Rebecca, and I liked the idea of saying that all Keys are subject to flooding, and then somewhere else under the insurance of putting about get the elevation certificate. I think it gets a little confusing when you say find out what zone flood zone you're in to somebody who's not familiar with insurance or any of that. To VE is AE, but if you're a ground level in a VE, what difference does that make? You know, compared to an AE still home, it just kind of I think that, you know, just making them aware that all the Keys are subject to a flooding more appropriate.
Get an elevation certificate for your structure? For your building? What do you think?
Yeah, they need to get an elevation certificate, but is that the right spot to put get an elevation certificate, or would that be
under insurance?
Yes. Mel, what do you think?
I think it needs to go under insure your property. But, you know, it kind of dovetails into know your flood hazard, because I'm kind of at a loss as to where precisely the elevation certificate, because the elevation certificate is going to help someone determine what the flood zone is, what their property's height is in relation to the base flood elevation. So there's a lot of education that comes with the elevation certificate. And obviously, if people are confused, they can rely on their insurance agent to guide, walk them through it.
Okay, so what about this? So my opinion is, and it's just an opinion, it belongs under insurance probably in the environment that we're in right now with risk rating 2.0. Now, in a different environment, I would have told you no. And the outcome that we want would be that that properties are properly rated. So the insurance is properly rated. The flood insurance is properly rated with that elevation certificate. Would you agree, Mel?
Yes. What do you think, Rebecca?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so do we agree we'll move that message there, and we'll make one of the outcome of that message being that flood insurance policies are properly rated?
Yes.
With an elevation certificate.
What?
With an elevation certificate.
So it doesn't happen with an elevation certificate, or are you saying that needs to be part of the message?
It would be more accurately rated with an elevation certificate.
Right. So we would say the message would be get an elevation certificate for your building, and the outcome then of that message would be flood insurance policies are properly rated.
Correct.
Okay. I love it. So then let's go back up here to the find your zone increase. This is a request for map information. That was one of the outcomes. Find out what zone you're in. Do we want to leave that message that we've talked about can be confusing? Or do we want to change it to find out the difference between a flood zone and an evacuation zone?
I don't want to use that because our evacuation zones, I've noticed we don't use the zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We use, hey, if you're above the 7 Mile Bridge, you need to evacuate. Or if you're below the 7 Mile Bridge, you need to evacuate. There seems to be a major landmark that we've used at least the past 3 years. And we've never said zone 1 evacuates. So you don't really need to know your zone when it comes to that.
Okay. So do we want to find out your flood zone?
And not to mention that the check mark in this is for key professionals and not for everyone or homeowners or renters or anything like that. So that's also why maybe that should move to insure your property.
That's for real estate. That's for the key folks that we send out the message to, which is the realtors, the lenders, and the insurance folks. Did I say insurance twice? So that's that key group that we have to send out to anyway. That's the key professional group.
I see Key Colony Beach suggested via chat, and it's in reference, going back to Alicia, know the elevation of your home.
Well, it could be business.
A building, structure. Need one of those words, Alicia.
Well, where do you want to put that? That we already said get an elevation certificate.
Well, I think find out what flood zone you are in is sort of repetitive to the first statement. All areas of the Keys are subject to a flood hazard. Could you just add no?
But maybe you have to look at the outcomes. So we said all of the areas of the Keys are subject to flood hazard. What do we want the outcome of people knowing that to be? That everyone evacuates when told. Maybe we need to change the messages. And then the other one is find out what flood zone you're in. So people are going to call and get map information. So and I think getting map information right now is key, because map information going forward with the preliminary maps and so forth is something that we really want people to do. So maybe we want to say, call the local community, find out what's happening with your flood zones or something along that line, but there are different outcomes for the different messages. So just keep that in mind. What do we want to do with this?
I would rather that say increase requests for insurance information than for map information.
We can do that. Does anybody else have a problem with that, or does everybody agree? But they're going to find out what flood zone they're in from where? Typically.
The
Where?
insurance or a map, either one.
From insurance or from the community. And since this is coming from the community with the community's contact information all over it.
Wouldn't that be from the elevation certificate?
Not everyone has one.
Let's say, or a flood zone determination. I mean, when you go to do a flood quote, the first thing that you have to do is a flood zone determination most of the time.
Yeah.
So it's.
Well, the county has this great website that you can go to, and you can type in your address and it tells you what flood zone you're in.
Oh, that's late.
So like I said, either one of them would give them that.
Well, so you could say
For
something
them-
like, find out your flood zone by going to, and we could put the county website.
To your local county or municipality website.
Well, does every municipality have that, or are they depending on the county's work in the flood zone maps and the upcoming
county
maps?
only has unincorporated.
Oh,
county
unincorporated.
listed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think Layton just said they have it, and I believe Marathon
that.
has it too, correct?
I have the link for the firm at FEMA, where you put your address in and it shows you your zone also.
Yeah.
The maps in the office.
Okay, but remember, these are going on the printed brochures and on those projects we just talked about. So this message goes on those types of projects.
And mine currently directs them to City Hall, the website, or to call or to write a letter with that request.
Okay. Do we want to find out what flood zone you are in?
I think that is very confusing. So if that's our key message that's going on brochures, I think it's confusing.
Okay.
And I agree. I believe it's repeating the question above. And there has to be some better verbiage.
It's not directed.
Can the message,
I understand that. I get that.
Can the message just be like, talk to an insurance agent about your flood zone? Maybe something along that line.
Talk to your insurance agent or your local community. But if you don't have insurance and you still want to know what your flood zone is.
How about contact your local
Talk
community?
to a local insurance agent.
Huh? I'm sorry, I can't hardly hear.
Okay, you could just say, talk to a local insurance agent.
Like that?
Yes, I had said a local, but we could do an insurance agent instead. Well, more simple than it was getting complicated.
An hour should be out. Find out.
Okay, yeah. Okay, and so are we going to still say it's an increased request for insurance information?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that's like an ultimate goal, is to have more houses insured through the NFIP and things like that, correct?
Well, under the insurance topic it is, yes. Improve insurance coverage. So call your agent to discuss your coverage. That's improved flood insurance coverage, but we could say here for increased requests for insurance information. I think that's fine. If you all agree, I think that's fine. Okay, and then we talked about protecting people, sign up for alerts. We know sign up for alerts, Monroe, that's been very effective, and we can track that under number 4. Prepare an evacuation plan. That's something we said, gets talked about a lot. Check with your floodplain official before planning a project. That would be fewer unpermitted work type of fewer cases that we all, have to send our code enforcement out for. And if any of these you want to change, we can change them. And keep the natural areas undisturbed and report illegal dumping for protecting natural floodplain functions. I know we had a real problem with clearing as well. But you can only get a credit for one message under each one of these topics. So you don't want to get too over the top with your messages and figuring out exactly where you're going to put them. Install permanent flood protection measures on your building, which is building mitigation. Again, is this too wordy? Does it mean anything to anybody when they read this? Install permanent flood protection. Do we need to drill that down under number 7? Thoughts?
I'm okay with this.
Mel, what do you guys use when you're talking about a firm?
It's it's going to be either venting on the lower floors or some type of opening, like a flood dam. But again, the only credits for mitigating, I hate to use that word, for putting up a flood barrier or on commercial properties. You don't get any on the residential properties, but you do get some credit for venting on residential properties in AE zone. Is that correct, Rebecca? I guess VE, you don't get anything?
It doesn't seem to really be affecting with the 2.0 rating anymore.
Okay.
Like it used to.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's specifically either venting lower floor or putting up some type of dam, type of dam.
Yeah, you may not get a lower insurance rate, but of course this is all about the impact to the program. Will there be fewer claims, even if they just use a dam or some sort of protection on their door or something of that?
Right. I mean, leaving the credits off to one side, you are helping to protect your property.
Right.
Right. You don't come home to a mess.
Right. Okay. So what about know your evacuation zone then? We just kind of tore that one up. Is that one still one that we want to use for Hurricane 1?
there any way you can say, yeah, it'd be too good. You know, depending on the storm is going to depend who evacuates, like Kristen alluded to. Kristen, do you have a better statement there?
Well, then we also, Kristen, I don't know if Kristen's still on or not.
Is there any way, Lori, that we can include in here as far as your evacuation zone of being the upper, middle, or lower keys?
What would that be called? Like, know your evacuation. I mean, the only word that comes to my mind is protocol, but that's going to be a big word, you know, like know your, I don't know. I mean,
like Kristen just went back and said she never said, they said they never use zone 1, 2, or 3. It's a geographical marker. Zones really don't, I don't know. That's a tough one.
Can it possibly be more along the lines of, and I can't come up with wording right now for some reason, but be aware of, you know, where you want to listen or know when you need to evacuate. You know what I'm trying to.
I was thinking pay attention to evacuation.
To official sources for evacuation information.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got cut out. With the building mitigation too, and I'm sorry, I got cut out right before we moved on. The building mitigation, instead of it saying building mitigation, is that something like protect your property? Would that be a better name for that heading? Because we have protect people, I think, above that. So maybe protect property would be.
We also have protect property. So we have six topics that we are stuck with, and one of them is protect your property. We get 4 more topics that we come up with because we have a PPI. So we can't do building. We already have building, protect your building. We can use something else in mitigation, but we can't do building. That's already one of the top topics that is credited.
Okay, number 3. Okay. So under building mitigation, would number 7 then go under number 3, and then we could get rid of number 7, or do we need number 7? Because
we don't want to get rid of any of the topics here. That gives us more credit points because we have more topics that can be credited. That's the main thrust of the PPI.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can replace it, but we don't want to get rid of it.
Got it.
I mean, we can replace it, but we want to end up with 10. And we can replace 7, 8, 9, or 10. So I know you said something, Kristen, about what that wording should be for both the evacuation zone and the building mitigation, right?
Follow official sources for evacuation information.
Right.
Okay, and what was the other one for the mitigation? Or did you have something for mitigation?
Nope. That one got washed out.
Okay. Okay. And then what about get a mobile app and get a plan? We already said that was good. What about the mobile app on your phone?
The county does not have a mobile app, but that's not saying that FEMA or the National Weather Service or something like that doesn't.
Yeah,
or
FEMA.
Office, Monroe County Sheriff's Office, maybe. Do they?
I don't know. Get an app FEMA does have an app. That you can use to, you can use to follow what's going on in the storm arena in your particular community. But you know, do we still think that's a good message?
I think the Alert Monroe would probably be better for that because the National Weather Service uses it and emergency management uses it. I mean, we already have, you know, sign up for alerts, but I don't know that apps are as.
Okay, well, we can drop, we have here, prepare flood evacuation, sign up for alerts. And then we say it again here. And I'm surprised actually that we got away with that because they're both the same messages under two different categories. What would be something else we could tell people to make sure that they evacuate? What other messages do we put out there at the, you know?
So I think the biggest message that I try to push during hurricane season is that not every hurricane is the same. Because people will be like, oh, I'll never evacuate again after Irma. But the next one is not going to be another Irma. It's going to be something completely different. So maybe that kind of messaging would be better.
That's a great message. I've said it before, and I did evacuate for Irma.
Right. Just because your house didn't get damaged during Irma doesn't mean that the next storm it's not going to be damaged.
Exactly.
So maybe we should say evacuate when directed. Not every hurricane is the same.
Like it.
And we'll just get rid of these messages altogether here. And
yeah,
put that
like
in.
every storm is different.
Every storm is different. I like
to make
that.
it more of a positive rather than a negative.
Every storm is different. So evacuate when directed. Not every storm is different. I like it. That's great. Okay, and licensed contractors, I'm sure we all still think that that's an appropriate message, right? Or am I wrong?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. All right, cool. I think we're done with messages. And of course, you all will have an opportunity to make comments on this, you know, when we put out the draft. So we're doing the direct mailers, we're doing informational material placed in public places, we're doing public workshops and booths at events. We did take the TV off as one of the projects, but that's not to say it still isn't something that we think is important. I'm gonna pretty much probably leave a lot of this the same. I may have come up with some other quotes here for the social media and so forth. And if you see anything that's blaring here when you get the draft, you can make any comments to that if you'd like. And this is just basically another chart, and I'm probably not even going to put this in the next PPI, so I don't even think we need to talk about it. It's just like reiterating which topics go in which outreach projects. We don't need to do it twice in two different ways. We can simplify it. I wanted to drive home the point, apparently. This section, we said, so these are the following. We have to keep, so what I was saying was we have to keep all this because we get extra credit in each one of these activities for having a PPI. So we have to at least address how our messages may impact these different activities. Again, if something like stands out to you, no, I don't want it to be worded that way, or it should be worded in some other way, it can certainly be changed, but that's basically in there to say, hey, these messages are going to, assist us in providing these services that are credited under the CRS program, and here's why. Does that make sense? Okay. And these are the annual projects, which this will look, the sheet I was showing you previously is the score sheet, the official score sheet that ISO uses. And this is our PPI list of, okay, here are the projects. So clearly this is going to look a lot different, right? Since we decided we were going to ixnay a lot of these projects. So this is on me, I will do this. But if you see any, thing in it that you want to point out to me, that's fine. Again, I was demonstrating here whether they're actually general outreach projects, targeted outreach, or informational projects. We may not need this anymore since we're going to basically use targeted. We can just say that all of them are targeted projects, and we won't need to point out, okay, this, and the reason for this is how many points each one should get. Because whether it's targeted or not targeted would mean, or priority or not priority would mean whether, how the score is 1, 2, or 6 points. And then the flood response projects. We can go through and talk about these messages today because we have covered a lot of ground, and we got a lot of things done that I really wanted to get done. So I really appreciate that. Do we want to forge on to our 12 o'clock ending time through these messages, or do we want to just tackle that in 2 weeks? Have we had enough? Are our brains dead?
Tackle in 2 weeks.
Any other?
It doesn't matter to me. I'm here if we want to stay on and do them. I know with these, I believe that there were some comments I had on these because I think we had the tropical storm come through last year, Lori, and you had sent me the message like, hey, we got to put out this messaging, but it didn't seem appropriate for the tropical storm about talking about evacuation unless it was someone who lives on a boat or whatnot, or in a trailer. But it seemed like some of the things might not have been good messages to put out in certain situations. Okay,
so it's not expected that we would put out all of these messages, and if I gave that direction, and I'm sure I did, it's here are the messages we've committed to, and it's if they're appropriate. It's not expected that all the messages that we choose are going to be appropriate for every storm approaching situation. But that said, we might want to beef this up a bit to include some of those things that you would normally see as messaging, even in a storm event where we weren't talking about evacuation. Because here we can have a bunch of messages. It's just, are we using these messages when they're appropriate pre and post storm? So we can beef that up. We can add more messages here. This is not an annual commitment. This isn't, we're going to mail out these projects. We're going to put these messages. We're going to make these people do these things. These are the messages we want to put out if they're appropriate when the time comes. So Kristen, maybe you and I could work on this together, do you think? And then propose it to the group?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
I think so too. Let's work together on that. And we tried to get together, but Kristen was at EMI, which I love EMI, Kristen, by the way. I've been there probably 20 times, and both teaching and taking classes, and it's such a fun place. I was so glad to see you got to go there. So she was at EMI when I hit her up to say, hey, let's get ready for the next meeting and go through this and talk about it. And then we could just never get together. With the holidays came on us, and then we could just never get together again. And then I think she graduated from college and did all kinds of other things. So we'll get together, Kristen, if we can, before the next meeting. We'll come up with a list of proposed pre and post storm messaging and we'll present it to the group and see if the group is in agreement with that. And then we're pretty much going to be done and ready to do a draft at that point. Just know that the county is the one who usually puts out this messaging, and what we want to happen in this PPI process is that you as local communities will be repeating these messages. If you are the local community, and your emergency managers, and you are giving out information that we would all be kind of giving out the same information, which I know is always the goal. But this program was written for states that don't do as well as Florida does. So just keep that in mind. And if you all, your local communities, you have some messages that you think that should be included in here, send them to me. Chris and I will hammer that out. The other thing is, I did send out to the communities a request for the information for the insurance part of the PPI, which gives us credit in activity 370. It's an additional 60 points, and all that insurance information is in there only because of that additional credit that we get for that. I need you guys' numbers to figure that out. If I don't have them by Friday, I won't be able to have them on the next meeting, because I have to put all of those numbers into those spreadsheets that you see in the document. So if you could send me your numbers, if you've already sent them, thank you very much. If you haven't, please make sure you get those to me ASAP. I think I gave a deadline of Friday. Okay. Do you have any questions of me at this point? Okay. Our next meeting is on the 25th, I believe. And it is scheduled for 9 o'clock, just to give us extra, there's two reasons. That was how we could work out having it recorded by the county and using a Zoom room, because they have other meetings running into it. We need to make sure we're done on time. So that'll be a 9 o'clock meeting as well.
Lori, I have my own Zoom room too if we ever need to use it. So just FYI.
Can it be recorded?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, that might be easier sometimes. I appreciate that. Yeah. It was a little tricky trying to coordinate because of other meetings going on.
Yeah, because I have my own room. So I think that would be able to. So
awesome. Okay. Let me put this attendance. Do I still even have it up anywhere? My attendance. Putting up the attendance here real quick as we're all leaving. If you are in attendance and you don't have an X mark under this attending column here, if you will please let us know, we'll add you. Just send me an email. We'll add you to the list. Okay? Thank you everybody for your participation today. Appreciate it. We'll talk next week or on the 25th, 2 weeks.
Thank you, Lori.
Thanks.
Sorry.